Well, welcome to Books in the Freezer, a podcast dedicated to the deliciously disturbing world of horror fiction. I'm your host, Stephanie, and today I am joined with author Nico Bell to talk about books that feel like those B horror movies we used to rent in the video store. I did get the pronunciation right? I didn't ask.
Yes, no, yeah, you did. Perfect.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. That's perfect. I'm really excited to be here talking about B-horror. I love B-horror. It's one of my favorite subgenres in the horror, so I'm excited.
It is fun, and I mean, well beloved within the genre.
Oh, for sure. There's definitely just so much excitement that revolves around B-horror and the gore and the costumes and the settings and everything that it is. It's a great way to get into horror for sure. Is to start with some of these really ridiculous films and books, and yeah, I love it.
Oh, perfect. We were talking about this before we started recording, but it's almost difficult to kind of define or put into words what makes like B horror. So how would you define it?
I think like classically it's defined as a low budget film that has maybe like a cult following to it. I think it is a feeling. I think you kind of hit on that. You know, it's something that sort of knows it's in on the joke. You know, it kind of winks at the camera with how ridiculous or over the top it is. It can be gory, it can be silly, comedic, but there's definitely something about it that doesn't take itself too seriously, whether it intends to be that way or not. It's definitely a feeling of fun and scary, but overall fun.
Yeah, I kind of got that too. Yeah, it is kind of this like low budget movie feel. And I was trying to like think like, okay, is it kind of over the top concepts? Like we'll talk later, but like Slither, you know, this like thing. But then I'm like, there's also like slashers that are considered kind of like B horror, like The Dentist or The Stepfather.
Yes. Oh my gosh. For sure. Yeah. I forgot about that movie. You just brought back like terror when I saw that movie when I was too young to be watching it. But yeah, although you could say like stuff like that is still like so exaggerated. The horror elements, the gore elements, the characters, there is an exaggeration to them. Maybe it pushes it way past where we expect it to go. Maybe that could be part of a definition of B horror. It doesn't really it doesn't stop where we think, okay, this is good. We're scared, we're terrified. And then it just goes a little bit more, perhaps. Oh my gosh. I just thinking of the dentist scene where he like pulls back the mouth and there's all these rows of teeth and yeah, but like even something like that, you know, it's so ridiculous that a part of you is terrified, but a part of you is like, this is wild, this is fun. I'm gonna have nightmares, but I'll get over it quickly, you know?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. The Dentist was one of those movies that I saw all the time in Blockbuster. And I was so intrigued by it. I would look at all the pictures on the back of the covers. That's what I would do. I would just hang out in the horror section and like pick up the VHS tapes and like look at the little, you know, picture snippets that they would have on the back and just be like, ooh, like feel like I was doing something dangerous.
Those were the fun days, right? Browsing through Blockbuster, picking up the little cover cases. Oh, it's so sad that people don't get to experience that anymore.
I mean, we have Tubi, which is kind of like the streaming equivalent of that, I guess, nowadays. I'm sure we'll have like in a few years people being like, oh, you know, we would have people over and just like find the craziest sounding movie on Tubi or something like that.
Oh my goodness, I feel very old. Yes. But yeah, those movies were always really fun to be, you know, to watch and explore with like a group of friends and, you know, the jump scares and it's just fun. It feels like you're part of a community watching them and experiencing them and, yeah, just having a good time, laughing out loud where perhaps the director didn't mean for you to laugh. That's always fun.
Yeah. I mean, I guess modern day, something close we would have to that, I guess, would be kind of like the drive-in with Joe Bob on Shudder, where I guess it is like a community live event of kind of watching these old, I mean, they're not always campy movies, but a lot.
Yeah,
That's
campy
a
movies
lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good example. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
And it is interesting because it's something that I think, yeah, derived from film, but that we see translated into books. So how does that happen if it's coming from like a low budget film aesthetic?
Yeah. It's trickier because, when you think B horror, I think a lot of people might naturally go to films first. But there's certainly plenty of books out there that fall into that category. Translating that into, words is always a lot of fun. And, the first thing that comes to mind is like the Rewind or Die from Unnerving series, because they specifically put out a call for B horror, and gave a bunch of really fun examples like Tremors or Leprechaun or those type of movies to kind of draw inspiration from. So to get that feeling on paper, it's a lot of over the top death scenes or like creatures that you just wouldn't expect to go, crazy on people, things like that, So it's really very parallel between the two worlds.
Yeah. I mean, you wrote one of the Rewind or Die novellas about, I mean, a killer pizza, kind of, right?
It was like a bagel at first, so it's like killer food.
Yeah.
It was about a high school girl who's trying to get in with the in crowd. She does this like initiation that goes wrong. It ends up summoning
Yeah.
it ends up making an oven come alive with magic, and then food comes alive, and then it's just a big free for all. There's like a giant croissant chasing down a teenager and like a brownie monster. So yeah, so that definitely was a lot of fun to write. And it was really just like taking off kind of the blinders when you write horror and trying to fit, into like the plot structure of a horror, and just being like, you know what, I am going to make like a cotton candy tornado. That's going to happen. We're going to do that. And not being like afraid to do that. So that's what I think B horror is, It's kind of being like, we're just going to go for it. And if it lands, it lands. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. So there's kind of like a fearlessness to people who write and direct B horror, I think. I love it. So perhaps I'm biased, but that's what I think.
I mean, I did love that. It was so fun. Just the idea of this like home ec classroom in this high school and then having this witchy element. It's fun.
Yeah, yeah, and that's really what it is. It's just fun. It's escapism for an hour or two out of the crazy world that we're living in, to just dive into a world that is completely unrealistic, but just fun.
Yeah. I think something I saw going on in Twitter, like a kind of debate that was going on, was I think talking about self awareness and like in B horror, does it always need to have like a wink to the camera or like we're aware of what's going on, or does it succeed when it's like, no, we are fully bought into this concept. We're like, this is our reality. This is it.
I think either works. I love reading like from directors and actors who do that type of stuff, or authors who do that type of stuff, to see if they really were serious, like if they really intended to put something out that, or if they were just like, we know that we've gone off the deep end and we're just gonna go crazy. Like with Velocipaster, which is one of like the best B horror movies ever, there's an interview with like the guy who directed and wrote it, and he said like he tried to make it serious, and he was like, I'm going to talk about good and evil and defeating, and then he's like, no, this is a story about a man who turns into a dinosaur. So I think there is definitely an awareness at some point, even with like Slither, like at some point we're like, we're just going full on creatures, gore, guts, fun, So perhaps there's always some sort of wink to the camera.
I love that. And I wanted to know, I guess, is this something that authors wear like a badge of honor?
I hope so. I hope they love it as much as like I love it. I know people who do like Unnerving, obviously. We've done it on purpose. But for the people that maybe like if we talk about books and maybe like one of the authors is listening and they're like, oh no, that wasn't my book. Like I didn't mean to write horror. Like, no, that it's out of love that we love it. It's just, I hope that they wear it as a badge of honor, because there's always this talk, there's always this debate in horror and in genre fiction in general about if it's literature, if it's worthy of like award status or whatever. There's always this debate about it. But there's always room for books like the unnerving series, because people just want to have fun and escape from reality for a couple of hours. So it doesn't need to be like a Vonnegut book. Not every book wants to be a Vonnegut book. So I hope that people who write this stuff, whether intended or not, I hope that at least, the knowing that we have enjoyed it and gotten, some sort of excitement from reading it is enough of a badge of honor for them. I would love it. I would love for people, like even my book, like Beyond the Creek, has bee elements to it. I would love for people to, say, oh, well, that gets pretty campy in the middle there, and that's fun, Not necessarily what I was going for, but you know what? Still fun. Still fun. I hope people wear it as a badge of honor.
I hope so. I'm glad you brought up the exact scenario that I was thinking of. It's like I talk about a book and the author's like, that is not, no, false. I'm writing an email right now.
No, it's definitely, I think all authors want their books to be read and enjoyed and consumed. And however a reader decides to do that, that's up to them. And that's totally cool. Like, just it's for entertainment, enjoyment. That's totally cool. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess in a way it is up to the audience to make that distinction.
Yeah, for sure. As it should be, right? They should get a say.
And as a fan, I mean, what is the appeal of it? I mean, we've kind of talked about it a little bit.
I like the campiness for sure. And I like that it's a good stepping stone into horror. A lot of people, and I'm sure for you as well, ask, I want to get into horror. I don't know where to start. I don't want to watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Where do I go? And I always go back to the 80s, into the camp, into like Gremlins or into Killer Clowns from Outer Space, because they're so just like the effects and the scare elements, the scare tactics are scary for sure, but they're things that are also a lot of fun, and you can laugh and enjoy them, and it's just a great stepping stone. So that's really what I love about it. I recommend B-horror movies all the time, or B-horror books all the time, to people who are just dipping their toe in the horror pool.
I would agree. I think especially in movies, if you're too scared to watch horror, or like what you think of in your head and have blown up as horror, I think, yeah, watching something that's cheesy, that has like very obvious effects, I think really makes it so much more palatable, and you can like
Oh, for sure.
really enjoy it.
Like when it's so obviously like a puppet or a man in a foam costume, or like just ketchup for blood or something, when it's so obvious, it's great. It's a little less scary than watching like the Saw movies or whatever your, yeah, whatever your terrifying horror movies are out there. It's definitely more palatable, if you're trying to just ease your way into the genre.
Definitely. So what would we say are some good movies that fit into this category?
Well, I mentioned Killer Clowns from Outer Space, which is one of my all-time favorites, and it's one of the first ones that I watched, like, to get into horror. A bunch of clown aliens land in a field, and their spaceship looks like a giant circus tent, and they have these ray guns that shoot popcorn, and they're turning people into gelatinous messes and sucking them up out of straws. I mean, you can't get much more silly and ridiculous than that. Now, of course, if you're scared of clowns, this is going to terrify you, but the costumes are just, I'm sure people, even if you haven't like seen the movie, you've probably seen references to the costumes someplace online. And they're just like these over the top, like foam, latex, whatever was going on back then, costumes that are so silly and fun that I think that's a great movie. That's a great example of like B horror that is good for people to just sort of step into and enjoy, without it being like mega scary. Like I said, unless you're scared of clowns, in which case that would be terrifying.
Definitely. I mean, we've mentioned a few, like The Dentist, as I was saying, and The Stepfather with Terry O'Quinn, like the 80s one. I haven't watched the new remake.
I have not either.
Oh my gosh, not new. I'm old. That was like 2007, not
yeah,
new.
the one that's like on Netflix or some streaming device now that like came out somewhat recently. Yes, I have not seen it either.
Yeah, the ones that I picked, I think, are actually more high budget, like B horror movies that have come
Probably a
out.
little bit.
Yeah. Because I'm thinking like Lake Placid,
Oh,
which is
yeah,
like
those are so fun. So fun.
so fun.
All of those movies, like J-Lo was in one, I think, with Anaconda.
Yeah.
It's like she's in one with a snake. What's that called? Anaconda. Like all of those movies where something's lurking in the lake are so wild and fun. They're so great. Yes, the Lake Placid is just ridiculous and great. Killer crocodiles, ginormous crocodiles, piranha, you know.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, those are so crazy.
I mean, Deep Blue Sea even, I think, falls into that with the performances, the shark. I mean, just how vindictive that shark is, I think, is camp on its own. Just
Exactly, for sure. Is that the one with Samuel L. Jackson?
Yes.
And he's like standing
Yes, it
up and
is.
making his big speech, and yeah, that that's great.
I would like to also add 47 meters down to like Uncaged. I don't know if you've seen that. I love it.
Is that maybe more?
She's in the first one. She's in 47 meters down. 47 meters down, Uncaged is like 14 girls in Mexico.
So they're just down at the bottom, like.
Well, it's like there's a whole story where like they go to this, like they live there. They go to this like English speaking school. Like one of their dads is like an archaeologist, and like he's doing some like cave diving and found this whole like like all these like sculptures underwater.
Oh my gosh, that movie is bonkers. You're so right. The sculptures underwater and the caves underwater, and like yes.
And this like ancient blind shark is there. But there's like the first big jump scare is like they're under the water and this like blind fish is like swimming in front of them, and it like opens its mouth, and I mean the sound design is like it screams, and I'm like, we're all underwater.
See, it's moments like that. I forgot about the blind fish. Oh, the shark. Oh my gosh. Yes, that's a great example right there. I love it. And you're right, they might be more of high budget. Like something like Velocipaster, I think it was like $30,000 budget or something crazy like that. But let me tell you, they worked every penny of that movie. That movie was glorious from start to finish. I gave it 5 stars, unironically. I loved everything about it. When I tweeted about it, the director guy retweeted it. I was like my proudest moment on Twitter. So, but yes, those movies too were just fantastic. I love them so much.
Me too. And I mean, I think probably the biggest one in recent memory, Malignant. Well, I think also that it was dropped without it being advertised as B horror at all. Like this is the guy that brought us like the Conjuring movies.
Yeah, and then he went in a different direction for sure. I gotta tell you, so of course there was a huge buzz on all social media from everyone in the horror community. You gotta watch this movie. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. So I like 20 minutes in, I'm watching it with my husband, my poor husband, who was never a horror fan until I forced him to start watching horror. And he guessed the twist like 20 minutes in. He was like, I know where this is going. I know it. And I was like, there's no way. I was like, I don't care how crazy everyone says this movie is. You are wrong. There is no possible way that is happening. Even I am telling you right now, no. And then I was like, what? Like I was screaming with excitement that he guessed it right 20 minutes into the movie. I was like, I have made you a true horror fan. Like
that is wild.
I know. I didn't even guess it. It was so crazy. But that movie for sure has camp in it. For sure B horror. Like the whole time I was sitting watching, I was like, that wig is awful. Like her makeup, her hair, like everything is so bad. And then it's like, oh, okay. So, I mean, it was wild. It was a great time. And yeah, I mean, recent, fun. Everyone got a blast out of it. Everybody loved that movie. Well, most people. Not everybody.
I'm like, I don't know that everybody loved it.
That's true. It's a bit divided, but I think it was fun. I think the twist for most people was unexpected.
Oh my gosh, it was. I feel like that with most movies, I usually like think I know where it's going, but it's always like the first red herring. And so when it's like, oh, it's looking like it's this, I'm like, dang it, I'm wrong. If like they're saying that it's looking like it's that an hour into the movie, my guess was wrong.
I know. I'm to the point because we watch so much that I just look at like the previews and I'm like, I know where this is going next. I know where this is going next. Like, I'm not even like giving these poor movies chances anymore. Like, you're in this genre so much and you're reading and writing and watching it. But Malignant totally blew my mind. It was wild. It was great. Fantastic. Fantastic B horror camp for sure.
I think so. I mean, I went into it kind of knowing that it was going to go that way. And I think that might have helped my viewing of it because I was like, okay, like I fully know what to expect. Like I know this is going to be, from what everyone says, absolutely bonkers and off the wall. I'm like wondering what it would have been like if I'm like, okay, this is the guy that brought us like all of these like horror movie franchises. Like, let's see what we have here. And you know, it's presented like super serious. Like there is no winking to the camera.
Yeah, I was a little hesitant because like the Conjuring movies and things like that, like that type of movie, for whatever reason, really scares me more so than some of the others out there, than like Hereditary or things like that. Like those movies, like the jump scares, and I don't even know. So like I was like, I don't know, I don't really want to go down that route, but I'm really glad that I watched it and gave it a chance. I don't know, jump scares in general are kind of, I literally scream out loud, so yeah. Got to be a little careful about, going to the movies and seeing them with people around.
Love it. I recently watched The Bride of Chucky for the first time. I know.
Oh my goodness gracious.
I know. But I had been watching the sci-fi series and loving it and realized like, oh, I've only seen like one or two of the actual Chucky movies. And they were all on Tubi. And it was so fun.
Oh, like, yeah, absolutely. Super fun.
Tiffany and Chucky, just absolute pair.
Just soulmates, right? Just for life. Absolutely. That's a great one with like puppets and just going crazy. And I had one of those dolls, one of the little, what Chucky's based off of, one, I don't even know what they're called, when I was a kid. It was like the best friend. It's like with the red curly hair and the overalls. I definitely had
Raggedy Ann and Andy?
No, it actually was like, I think it actually talked to you, like a My Buddy. I think that's what it was called. I think it was called My Buddy. So it took me a while to get into watching Chucky because it definitely reminded me of when I was a kid when I had one of those dolls. But that's, super fun, iconic series, cult classic series that, I feel like everyone in horror, should probably watch at least one of those movies at one point because they're just so wild and fun. And then, of course, Tiffany is great. Yeah.
I do. I love her. I put off watching the Chucky movies for a long time because I like genuinely, as an adult, like genuinely have a fear of dolls. Like they unnerve me. I've like never felt comfortable around them. So it was something I was like, no, what if that actually scares me? And I was like, you know what? No, everyone says these are like funny, and they are funny. So it was palatable to not get me too scared over killer talking dolls.
Well, I am very afraid of spiders, so I will not watch like Eight-Legged Freaks or anything like that. I watched Arachnophobia, which I guess could also maybe be a little bit camp or B horror. I watched that when I was a kid, and that was it. Like, I'll never watch it again. I've been scared of spiders ever since. I used to check my bed for like my bed sheets to make sure there are no spiders in it. I checked my shoes every now and then. I still do. Like, that movie terrorized me. For sure. So I understand like being afraid of something and not wanting to watch anything about it.
Did you read that story, that like scary stories to tell in the dark story about the girl with like the pimple that was actually like a bunch of baby spiders?
Nope. Nope. No, thank you. Yes, but I do know what you're talking about. Yes, spiders are so scary. No. Yes.
They are. Well, should we talk about some books?
Sure, yes. That would be fantastic.
All right. I am starting off with a short story collection called The Razor Blades in My Head by Donnie Goodman. This came out, I want to say, last year, but I feel like time is a blur. So apologies if it was like 2019 or 2020. But I picked this because of the final story, which is kind of like a novelette called The Old Baking, which, I mean, short pitch is about like a giant crab attacking a crabbing vessel, like a shipping boat, a fishing boat. So, of course. But the story is about these two fishermen who own a failing business and they owe a large debt to a man named Otis Bailey, who's a mobster, and they call him the King of the Old Bay. So they are very desperate to catch some crab and make some money to pay this man off. And at first, it seems like all their problems are going to be solved when they spot a ghost ship. And needless to say, things go downhill from there.
That sounds really exciting.
It is. And if you want to buy just that story alone is available in the Kindle store. I think it's on Kindle Unlimited, but it's also featured in this short story collection. So not all the stories in here I would say are like B horror, but a lot of them are. You've got like killer turkeys, you've got evil kids, you've got stories about wrestling, you've got like the titular story about a man who like feels something on the top of his head. And I mean, you can see what the short story collection is titled to know where that story goes.
Very exciting.
But this was a ton of fun.
It sounds like a lot of fun. I don't think I have read it. No. But it sounds interesting. I'll have to put that on my TBR.
It was fun. It was a good time, but it was also very much leaning into the horror, you know, and it was very scary and gory. So, like, I don't know, if you're looking to have just the full spectrum of the experience, just like have like, you know, horror stories with crazy outlandish concepts that are having fun, I would suggest it. So that is The Razor Blades in My Head by Donnie Goodman.
Very cool. When we like discussed doing this episode, the first book that came into my mind was Cirque's Berserk by Jessica Guess, which I recommend this book all the time for people because, first of all, Jessica is an incredible writer. Like, all of her stories and short stories are incredibly scary. But this one I really enjoyed. It's set in the past and in the present. And in the past, there was a traveling carnival that got closed down and abandoned because a group of teenagers were said to have murdered 13 people and then themselves, you know. So and in the present, we have a group of seniors from high school who are kind of bored, and they go and they decide they're going to explore this abandoned carnival and see what the lore is all about. And what I love about her book is that it hits on some really like fun elements of horror. Like, you have the sign on the closed abandoned carnival that says don't go in, obviously, like you're gonna die. You know, you get the warning. But she also puts in a lot of like musical elements to it. So if you wanted to have like a soundtrack to a book, like the different parts are each have a musical song attached to them, like Rhythm of the Nights or Kids in America or stuff like that. And I just thought that was really fun and clever. And there's a lot of murder, but there's also like this story of, you know, teenagers fitting in, wanting to live life to the fullest. And Lilith makes an appearance, you know, the queen of the underworld. So it's a really fun book that I think a lot of people will certainly enjoy. And Jessica's just an incredible writer. So yeah, that's one that I've recommended it like 100 times.
I'm glad you did. I love Cirque Berserk. I've definitely been singing its praises. It is so fun. And I really liked the characters. I like where the story went. It was so inventive and made me want to I wish I could roller skate.
Yeah, right? Wouldn't that be fun? I can't either. So yeah. Yeah, I think you hit like inventive is a good way because it took a turn that I didn't see coming, like the whole like why things were happening. I didn't expect it to go that route. So I think that Jessica did a really good job of surprising the reader in a subgenre that, you know, perhaps people think they know where it's going. I think it would be fair to say that you'll be surprised, like pleasantly surprised. Yeah.
Definitely. Where would you rate this on the scariness scale? Is it room temperature, fridge, or freezer?
I would say, scary. I'd say it's fridge. You know what? I'm going to go fridge. But you know what? That's just me. Perhaps some people will go in other ways. I really enjoyed more like I enjoyed the setting, the characters, I enjoyed why they were doing it, and I really liked the musical elements. I thought it was a fantastic book. I highly recommend.
My second pick is one I mentioned, I think, on the job horror, like workplace horror episode, but I thought it fit really well here as well. And that is The Night Stalkers by Christopher Triana and Ryan Harding. And I think this just won a Splatterpunk award, if I'm not mistaken. But this absolutely plays out like a cheesy 80s movie. Like, it has completely that vibe. This is about two rival grocery stores, and one of them is run by a cabal of Satan worshippers, and like the store is called Devil's Food. Um, and the other grocery store is having all these people forced onto an overnight shift to try to keep up with the demand so they can keep up with Devil's Food. And this is the night that Devil's Food decides that they are going to go in there, break in, and basically kill everyone working this overnight shift. So it is this standoff. It gets absolutely wild. It very much is that like blood, boobs, and guts flavor of like 80s movies. Like a Karen meets a deli slicer, and that's like the first chapter. Like, it is just absolutely going there 100%, like unapologetically.
I love that. I have to read this book. It sounds like something I would absolutely love, and I have not read it, but this definitely sounds like a lot of fun. Grocery store horror, which seems to be a thing now. There was like a Daniel Kloss book. I probably said his name wrong or got it wrong. Where it's like a haunted. Well, it's not a grocery store, but it's a haunted fast food restaurant.
I just bought it. That just came in the other day. The burger that ate us.
There we go. I
Or is
probably
it
got his
no?
name wrong
It's the
too.
ghost that ate us. Is it the ghost
yes,
that ate
the
the ghost that ate us?
Nailed it. So
And then it has a long subtitle, like the true story of the Burger City poltergeist or something like that.
But obviously I like food horror, but I like when horror is in places that we don't necessarily expect, like fast food or like a grocery store. Like, those sound like a lot of fun.
Yeah, or an IKEA, like an horror store. Not an IKEA, but a IKEA.
Exactly.
Those were
yes.
air quotes that you couldn't hear.
Exactly. Yes. It's always fun when it says someplace that you're not expecting it. Yes.
So I would say this is fridge. Like, you definitely can't give this to everyone. I think it definitely has to be someone that is looking for and appreciates that flavor of horror. So that is The Night Stalkers by Christopher Triana and Ryan Harding.
Very cool. I thought of The Rue by Alan Baxter. So for people who are unfamiliar, this was kind of written as, I want to say, a little bit of a joke, but in a good way, because Alan Baxter's from Australia, and there was a viral real life kangaroo going around the internet who looked like he worked out and had a six pack. And, Alan Baxter was talking about it, and we were all talking about it in the horror community about how it would be so much fun if somebody wrote a horror story based on this killer kangaroo with these six packs and these incredible biceps. And so Alan wrote a story about a small rural Australian town that is being terrorized by a killer kangaroo. And I will say, this is a lot of guts and gore. This isn't going to be for everyone, because nobody in this book is safe. Children, women, men, everyone is going to be a victim to the killer kangaroo. But it's a lot of fun in that campy way. I mean, we get to see the kangaroo. We see his orange flame eyes. It's over the top. It's very tongue-in-cheek. It's very wink to the camera. And Alan also has like a lot of familiar names in the horror community in there. A lot of authors like Steve Shred and Keelan Patrick Burke. So you get to see some people in there, And also what I really love about this is that there is a serious undertone to it. Alan actually addresses, things like domestic violence and male toxicity, and like how farmers struggle and maybe turn to alcoholism, suicide rates in men. He has this really great note to the reader at the very end of the book talking about very serious matters. So I really love it. I really love it. It started out as sort of like I wonder if somebody would write this book about this crazy kangaroo. And it turned into over-the-top gore camp with a very serious message. So The Rue by Alan Baxter, I think it's great. I think it's a fun read. And it's quick. It's a novella, so it's definitely a quick read.
I'll
And I
have
would
to read
get a
that.
fridge for sure. Like I go again, you know, and like the other book that you mentioned, like it's not going to be for everybody because it is like kids. I'm just saying, nobody's safe. But I do think it's a good read.
Oh yeah, definitely also that note for the Night Stalkers. Like there was a kill that's teased, and I'm like, they wouldn't do that. They do that.
Mm. Nothing's off the page. Yeah, everything everything happens. Yep.
I love that. I've seen that all around Twitter, so I definitely need to read it.
Yeah.
For my final pick, I was like, you know what? I should actually do one of the Rewind or Die books. I feel like I talk about them a lot. But I picked up Transmuted by Eve Arms, and I am so glad that I did. I love body horror, and this was so fun. This is about a trans woman named Issa who's a streamer, and she doesn't usually show her face, but in the beginning of the book we kind of see that she's been fundraising for a while to get gender affirming surgery, and she's kind of like just hit that goal. She just has like all the money that she needs for this surgery when her sister shows up and tells her that her dad needs life-saving surgery and basically drains all of her savings. So I don't know, right away I was already like so on board with this character and so like devastated for her. And then you see like she also has a tough relationship with her father, and it sucks until she meets someone who gives her the name of a doctor who might be able to solve all her problems and give her this new experimental surgery that promises great results. So she goes, and it's a little shady, and it's a little bit of like a strange procedure. And she needs to go back for like 3 visits, but like the first visit is like really strange. She's like dipped in this like weird liquid, and she starts like hallucinating. But she kind of sees like, oh wow, no, it's working. And she like goes back for the second one, and it's like working, but there's also like she's getting taller. She's like almost 7 feet tall now, and she's like, this is like a weird like second puberty. But then the changes don't stop. Like that, like her body starts completely transforming, and I mean, she's out to lunch with a friend when like her nose falls into a bowl of soup. You know, it's like oh, and it just takes a turn. It is so fun. Like, I was thinking I would honestly love to see this as a movie just because Issa, it's not a slasher, but she's got big, like, final girl energy, like, in kind of, like, that last confrontation. I'm like, I would be down for this. Like, I really like this. I just had so much fun with it. That is Transmuted by Eve Harms. I would say it's, like, Fridge, too.
Yeah, I would think so. I love this one as well. It's super fast paced. Like when I got to the end, I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, I'm done. Like I want more, you know? And I also would love to see this into a movie. The transformation scenes, or even when she gets that first injection from the doctor, those scenes were so visceral on the page. I can only imagine what they would do in the hands of like a director. They're incredible. That whole book was really fun. And that has a serious undertone too about, you know, body acceptance. And there's even some fat phobia in it, and interesting parts about, you know, this transformation that she goes through. And then it takes that turn that you mentioned that you just like, what the heck is happening? Like it just goes off the rails. And the final scene is incredible as well. So I love Eve Harms. I hope that we see so much more because like this is a writer that I absolutely love. I read this book and absolutely fell in love with Eve. So yeah, I agree. It's fantastic. The final book that I had picked is a book that I just read kind of recently. It's Man Fuck This House by Brian Asman, and I read it solely based on the title, and it didn't disappoint. You know, it's a haunted house story, but it's a little bit different than what we usually see. You have your typical suburban family: mom, husband, daughter, son. The mom's name's Sabrina, the son's name's Damien. You know, you get those little nods. And they move into this new house, and we have a few dynamics set up. Sabrina is feeling very much like that suburban mom who doesn't really know what to do with herself. You know, she's trying to figure out, like, she gave up stuff for her family, you know. And then she has this very weird son, Damien, who she's afraid of because he's so incredibly creepy. Like, he lives up to his Damien name. And what we start to see is that she hears things and sees things, and the house sort of starts falling in love with her, is the way that I thought of it to myself. The house really takes a liking to Sabrina and takes offense when Sabrina feels offended. And so things spiral in a direction that is, I would say, pretty unique for a haunted house story. And then the final act is so wild. In a million years, you couldn't have, like, I was just like, oh, okay, we're going here. Perfect. And then, yeah, those final scenes are a bit surprising. So I would say this is a really interesting haunted house story. It's a very fast read again. It takes in a different direction that I didn't see coming. And it takes the trope and it just does a little something different with it, you know, with a suburban mom and her really creepy son. So yeah. So Man, Fuck This House, Brian Asman. I would say Fridge too. I think, yeah, I think that would be an appropriate one. Not super, super scary, not, you know, but it's fun. It's a good one.
I love it. I mean, yeah, that was another one I saw all over Twitter, and I saw that title, and I was like, perfect.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, any title
A
like
plus
that,
title
I'm definitely
game.
gonna, yeah, for sure. I'm gonna try it.
Well, that sounds interesting now that I know kind of what it's about after I had been like seeing it everywhere and thinking like, I'm going to read it eventually. So that sounds really good.
Yeah, it was fun. It was interesting for a house to have this relationship with this woman and to see where that takes it. It was interesting.
Well, one of the traditions on the show is to talk about a chilling obsession or something that we've been enjoying in like horror media or horror adjacent media lately. So what have you been enjoying?
I just finished binging Evil on Paramount Plus, which I got into really deep. I was like, gotta keep watching. And I'm excited to know that they have another season. Season 4 has been approved. At least that's what the internet says. But it's about a priest and an agnostic psychiatrist and an atheist scientist who who look into the paranormal infestations and things of the like. And so there's a lot of dynamics that play out. There's a lot of good versus evil. There's a lot of family dynamics between the agnostic psychiatrist and her husband and her mother and her 4 children. This show is I always have issues with this show's setting because she has a house underneath this giant train track, and then the inside of her house is just so strange, and like the set directors, I don't know what, like they just have it all very dark, but then they have like these cutout stars hanging from the ceilings because she has 4 girls. I don't know. It's just every time I see that house, I'm like, that is a very interesting choice that they made. Her bedroom is like black and very ornate, and I'm just like, would a house look like this? I don't know. But other than that, I just, it's a fun good versus evil, demon, Satan, God type of show that, yeah, on Paramount Plus, and that's what I've been watching. I just finished it.
Awesome. I watched the first 2 seasons, and then I was like waiting for the 3rd season, so it's fully out now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I will have to dive in and get caught up. But yeah, that was a really fun show too. I think like once we get into like who everyone is and like what's like behind everything, it's really fun. And then like, yeah, I mean, by the end of season 2, I don't know where season 3 goes, that like everything might all be connected and part of this like larger conspiracy.
Yeah, for sure. And all the evil is closer to everybody than they think. Yeah, I think it's a good show. I'm excited to see what season 4 has.
I am too. Mine, I'm going in a little bit of a different direction. I'm choosing an album that just came out by Ethel Cain called Preacher's Daughter. This is like Southern Gothic indie folk, but it's like a story album, which is why I'm choosing it. So it is like this fictional story about like this woman named Ethel, and I will spoil it just because I don't think that in any way takes away from like you enjoying the songs. And I think actually some of the songs kind of need the context for you to like understand like what is even going on. But essentially it's like her mourning the loss of a lover, and then like she falls in love with another man who is a criminal and dies in a shootout, and she was a preacher's daughter, and she like runs away from home and meets this man who tries to kidnap her. And yeah, it's pretty rough, and she tries to get away, and he murders her and ends up cannibalizing her.
Goodness
gracious.
Like, yeah, so I'm like, it's dark. It's like a dark like Southern Gothic, like
Yeah.
fully getting into like my religious trauma. And then the a final song is like he is like cannibalizing her corpse, and she is like singing about like watching him do this. So,
All right, cool. Excellent.
so I know it sounds absolutely bonkers, but it is like a very like serious and artistic and like beautiful album that you're like, this is a beautiful song.
Great. Perfect. I'll put it on while I'm folding laundry. Great. That took a turn, I gotta tell you. When you first started talking about it, I was like, this is interesting. And then it really spiraled. It escalated quickly. All right.
Funny. Yeah, it is. It is. That is Preacher's Daughter by Ethel Cain.
And then for our final tradition on the show, I always ask guests for a final girl song. So Nika, what is your final girl jam?
Yeah. I picked Red Rover by Scene Queen, who is a metal, I guess maybe more like soft metal artist. And it has a very final girl. I've kind of been listening to it on repeat as my feminine rage has been escalated lately with everything going on. So yeah, Red Rover by Scene Queen is a lot of fun.
I love her. I do love that her album is called Bimbo Core. That is just like absolute perfection. If you don't know her, she's on TikTok, and like that is her thing, is that she's like this scene queen, like makes like metal music and screaming, but you know, she's like head to toe like in pink and hyper feminine.
She's blonde, fully pink, kind of like a Barbie vibe while screaming into the microphone. Yes, exactly.
It's absolutely perfect. Definitely fits the vibe of that playlist. So can't wait to add that on. All right, well, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me about B horror and campy horror and all the fun horror.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, all on Nico Bell Fiction, and my website, Nico Bell Fiction.
All right, perfect. And then you have books that people can check out. I know we talked about Food Fright.
Food Fright, and I have Beyond the Creek, and then me and Sonora Taylor just put out Diet Riot, a fatter punk anthology, which is fat positive horror, and then me and Roxy Voorhees are putting out with Creature Publishing a pro-choice anthology that should be coming out really soon. We're working on it. It's going to be a fast turnaround, so that's coming out.
Awesome. Yeah, keep us updated on that.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you so much again. Books in the Freezer is a bi-weekly podcast. We post episodes every other Tuesday. You can find us on Twitter at Books Freezer Pod, on Instagram at Books in the Freezer, or on TikTok at Books in the Freezer. You can send us an email at booksinthefreezer@gmail.com. If you would like to support the show, there are a few ways to do that. One of them is to become a Patreon supporter on Patreon. There's like a $1, $3, and a $5 tier, and there's different things that come with each tier, like early episode releases and Voxer chats and movie nights and getting to know what episodes are coming up, and getting to ask questions when I interview authors and things like that. So if that sounds interesting to you, definitely check that out at patreon.com/booksinthefreezer. Another way to support the podcast is to use the Amazon link that takes you kind of right to Amazon, and you just do whatever normal shopping you would normally do, and a small percentage of that goes to help the podcast. If you would like to help the podcast without spending money, there are a lot of ways to do that. Most of them involve word of mouth. Just tell someone about the podcast, post about it on your Instagram story, participating in the, Books in the Freezer reading challenge, anything like that. Talking about the podcast just helps spread the word, especially when it's a, indie sort of deal like this. We thrive on word of mouth. And just thank you to all of you who take the time to do that. And of course, leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, just like a few sentences. I think it can honestly be like one sentence and a star rating. If you use Spotify, I think you can just do a star rating. It's like a quicker process if you're a Spotify user. So thank you to all of you who have done that. I did see we have quite a few reviews on there. So again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm Stephanie. You can find me on Twitter at lady_Gagnon. That's LADY_GAGNON. Or on Instagram at That's What She Read. And that's with 2 A's. See you next time on Books in the Freezer.